It's Wizards versus Lesbians, a podcast for your ears. Hello and welcome to Wizards versus Lesbians. My name is Isaac.
I'm Alexis, and here is our guest expert.
Soyi Kim, maybe not an expert, but a guest.
She may not be an expert on the thing that we are talking about, but she is an expert on feminist Korean art dealing with the body. So she is definitely an expert in something.
Thanks.
She's an expert on something that may or may not be tangentially related to the subject of today's bonus episode, which is the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I believe was the winner of this year or last year's Best Picture at the Oscars. Is that right?
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yes, and I believe Best Actress and also Best Supporting Actor and possibly also Best Supporting Actress. It won a bunch of awards.
Yeah.
And before we get into the episode, because I definitely am going to have some critiques, I just want to say that I think it's awesome that a movie this weird got that kind of mainstream recognition. Who wants to try the plot?
I will try the plot.
Go for it.
I will do this as succinctly as possible. This is about a Taiwanese American woman whose ADHD is so bad that she may have the power to save the multiverse solely by virtue of having fucked up everything in her life.
Is that it?
I mean, you guys can then expand on that, but that's my summary of the movie.
Yeah.
Also, there's a bagel. Multiple bagels.
Yes, a mom's conflict with her kids and with kids these days in general, along with the plight of being an immigrant small business owner and general regrets and a midlife crisis on top of all of that leads her to a sort of crisis on infinite Earths kind of situation.
Soyi, anything you want to add?
It's also has to do with like a typical Asian mom and daughter relation and its conflicts, especially enhanced by the daughter's gender involved in here. So
yes, we have a lesbian.
Yes. Are there lesbians? Yes, there are two of them.
Indeed, and the lesbian may also be a wizard, by our definition.
Yes,
which we can discuss later on.
And in one of the multiverses, there are more lesbians.
Exactly.
This is true. That's my favorite of the multiverses.
It would be.
Yes.
The hot dog fingers.
Yeah, the hot dog finger universe. And I think that's probably it. Why should you watch this movie?
So, since you really like the movie, why don't you start us off with reasons you should watch it?
Wow. So I watched it three times, and I cried 3 times. And the reason why I think we have to watch it maybe has to do with the time when I didn't know that this movie is going to be prizes awarded. But it was more to do with the representation of Asian Americans in the U.S. Commercial film industry, but also has to do with, I guess how can I say? Also casting Michelle Yeoh in her mid-age to sort of like show not her martial art aspects of all this like physical skills, but also her personal part of description that Daniels particularly thought of even before kind of planning out on this film. So I think that the love to the Michelle Yeoh and then also the representation of Asian Americans in the U.S. has a lot to do with the reason why we have to watch it.
Yeah, and I also think it has Michelle Yeoh in it is by itself a pretty good reason.
Right.
It's really interesting. I think it has a good complicated depiction of complicated family dynamics, and one that does not resolve everything perfectly and neatly. And it has, again, really good portrayal of undiagnosed ADHD and how hard that makes your life. And also how hard that makes the lives of everyone around you.
I would say why you should watch it, in addition to all of that, is that it's extremely funny. There are a lot of really good jokes. The filmography is interesting in and of itself. I meant cinematography. It's full of a lot of like fun references to other, styles and materials. It has really good fight choreography, as you might expect.
Really good fight choreography.
Which is always a hoot. If you are a fan of sort of Stephen Chow, and that sort of like cartoon silliness mixed with like sort of dazzling martial arts sequences, I think that you'll find a lot of things to love in here. Yeah, no, it was a really good time. I will
also I was going to say I also add that it has really good use of it's just really well constructed. There's a lot of good foreshadowing and then delivery later, and there's a lot of good use of visual symbols that all tie together very neatly by the end. Like, not perfectly neatly, but remarkably neatly given how many things they are pulling in and throwing at you.
Yeah, it's a good, coherent, work of art. I've heard, like, a lot of people be like, whoa, this is, one of those mind-blowing, I don't know what's going on movies, but it's really not. It's like, it's easier
it's remarkably easy to follow.
It's really easy to follow movie. Given, that it's like a multiverse, science fiction kind of a film. Why shouldn't you watch the movie?
Well, I think it's kind of long. If you are watching this movie and you have, say, ADHD, and you're just going, oh, this movie will have great ADHD rep, well, it does switch tracks a lot, which, will help keep you entertained. But on the other hand, it is pretty long. And I definitely felt like there were some scenes that could be cut on the rewatch.
Yes. I personally was not a huge fan of the ending, and also not a huge fan of some of the thematic implications of said ending. But I'm bigger on like, I get a bad taste in my mouth if I walk away from a movie, not sort of agreeing with what it's positing more so than most. So, that's a minor thing. I really think that like, even though there are a number of, quibbles that I have with the thematic content, which we'll get into, the movie is so entertaining and so like just good in terms of its performances and the way that it's crafted that, you should probably watch the movie. Unless you have a problem with one of the following content warnings.
Well, there's all sorts of flinchy body injuries. Everything from, like paper cuts to all sorts of... It does a thing that Western martial arts movies don't usually, or Western action movies often don't do, which is showing the impact of the violence, like just on the human body. Not just in terms of, oh, there's blood, but like watching the fist connect and watching what that does to the body. That, I think a lot of like Avengers movies and stuff tends to flinch away from. I think it makes action scenes better, but I did also flinch a bunch.
Casual homophobia, casual racism, casual misogyny, probably. Intergenerational trauma, passing down, and, people get killed. But that's sort of...
Oh, and then there's just a lot of stuff that's just really gross.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's gross out humor. There's like there's a sort of extended butt plug martial arts sequence.
See, that wasn't so much gross. It's all the weird things that people eat.
Oh, I don't have a problem with that. But...
People eat all sorts of gross things. But
that's just true in life.
Yeah, that's fair. But just still, like watching a man enthusiastically masticate a piece of chapstick was certainly a scene.
Yes. And like, if you don't like fluids...
right, if you don't like fluids, there's a lot of fluids.
You may wish to look away during the hot dog sequences.
Right. Okay.
But there we go. I think that pretty much covers it. So.
All right. So we'll jump to the spoiler zone, and now.
we'll jump to the spoilers out. So, in the background of this episode, you will hear Angel the kitten wailing most piteously because Alexis's fiance was out of the house. Please trust us, we were not torturing the kitten in the spoiler zone. So I think that pretty much, this is the podcast where we don't let moms get off easy as a general matter.
That's correct.
And
yes.
And this mom kind of gets off easy, kind of, a little bit.
Kind of a little bit. I do think she gets off a little easier than I would want her to get off. But at the same time, I mean, it's pretty clear that 100% of the problems in the relationship with her and her daughter are her fault.
Yes.
And it's also made very clear that a lot of this is her acting out her intergenerational trauma.
Yes.
And that doesn't absolve her from responsibility. And also, I don't feel like everything is necessarily resolved. Like, she has a great hug it out moment with her daughter, but it doesn't, the fact that she's still spacing out in the tax thing suggests to me that she still hasn't resolved all of her problems, and that there's going to be fights and stuff in the future, and that she's still going to have to do a lot of work.
Yes, I would agree with that.
So are we in the spoiler zone?
Yes,
right
now we're in the
Yeah,
spoiler zone. Now you can spoil anything you want.
Because I have a really conflicting ideas about the ending, especially the resolution part, especially through the lens of this film as romantic movie in a way that because there are multiple layers of romances, and it's between female characters, but also between kind of affectionate relations between family members. And what kind of bothers me as for the reason why some people may not be very happy watching it is that not every family resolve it this harmoniously, even if there were like conflicts and tears. Many family actually sort of go separate ways, and then that's actually I think truer to reality. So that was why I think it works as some kind of identification marker for Asian Americans, and also the intergenerational conflicts in terms of some family members' gender and sexuality, but also because of this so sort of harmless resolution, it may also become a alarming to, I don't know, a bad representation for some people.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about that, and I'll be interested to hear whether you think, because I think that there is, in addition to sort of the family arc, there's also kind of an assimilation arc going on with the mom over the course of,
and especially with Joy, the daughter,
yes. But over the course of the movie, we see the mom going through a whole bunch of different lives that she might have lived, right? And one of those lives is one where she stayed in Taiwan, and
it becomes Michelle Yeoh, basically.
Right? But grows up to become a famous performer, martial artist, and basically lives in a Wong Kar-wai movie.
Yes, I love the Wong Kar-wai pastiche with her and Waymond, and the green light and the serious conversations, the walking away,
how he's dressed in his glasses, and
right,
the
and the cigarette, just everything. Where her fancy dress with his jacket draped. I know, it's just spot on.
Yes. What is your favorite Wong Kar-wai movie? Mine is probably 2046. I've seen it 3 times and I can't remember the circumstances of any one viewing. I think in one I was in a half-deserted theater that seemed like it was from a David Lynch movie. Where was I? Oh yeah, I also really like Chongqing Express. And sort of at the very opposite end of that, you have the most alien, cartoonish American version of her life, which is the one where they all have hot dog fingers, and she is in a
Is a
lesbian
lesbian.
relationship with the IRS lady,
Yes.
who puts in a magnificent performance of her own, I must say. I was like, who is that? Who is that? Who is that? And it turns out that it's trans ally and all around good egg, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes.
And sort of part of the arc of the movie is how eventually or over time her sort of idealistic idea of what staying home would be like gets problematized, and the wackadoodle hot dog universe gets more human and like emotional, right? Until
To the point where you're actually like, I at least came off feeling genuinely moved by like the tender scene between her and Jamie Lee Curtis with like their weird floppy hot dog fingers and
Yes.
playing the piano with her feet.
So so there's a couple of different sort of like angles of reconciliation here, where she has to tell her abusive father, who to that he doesn't get to call the shots anymore on the one hand, and so she's sort of distancing herself from that sort of past of like staying with her family in Taiwan, and more accepting the weird Americanness of being gay and eating hot dogs, which may or may not be people's hands.
Indeed.
So, and like, but there's a couple of different sides to that idea, and one of them is that it does, since she does sort of turn out to like accept to a certain extent the life that she is currently living. It also means that the movie has to accept American movie making values at the end. And that's part of like, I mean, if after we had that giant blow up, you told me that I still needed to lose weight and that my girlfriend needs to get a haircut, I'm not sticking around to help you with your taxes.
Right, and that is, that is part of, again, why I feel like the movie doesn't entirely let her off, because it's clear that she's still learning. And at the same time, like, when my friend Grace's mom would give me, would be like, Alexis, you need to lose weight. Here, have a smoothie. Like, that was a genuine... that was a genuine sign that she'd basically decided to adopt me as her weird white extra child. Like, I was like, I'm hurt, but also I'm touched.
Yes, there's a way in which this is realistic, right?
Right.
That she's not going to become a perfect mom overnight, but that she's trying, and this is the extent to which she's able to try, which is fine. But it also left me a little bit frustrated that because this movie is about like all the possible stories. Mm-hmm. And the one that we end up with is the one which values A, personal freedom, America, but also B, family over everything, America. Like if we're going to go this far outside the lines, I always feel like it's a kind of a sad and a bit of a waste to end up back inside the lines to that extent at the end.
Yeah, though I'm not sure I think family over everything is an oversimplification, because, I mean, the movie starts out with Evelyn valuing family over everything. The movie starts out with Evelyn claiming to value family over everything, but in the end, it's all, she's got this really sort of rugged individualism of, I need to do everything myself. And it is only and she uses family as an excuse. So, for example, she doesn't want to deal with her dad's feelings about having a gay granddaughter. So she just, so she doesn't even give her daughter a chance to come out. Even though we see in one of the universes that the dad is like, whatever. You know what? I'm in America and I'm old. I don't even care anymore. And then by the end, by the end, she's depending on other people. She's accepting her daughter's help. She's with, the taxes, and she's accepting a ride from Becky. And she's relying on other people. so that's, in some ways that's against this sort of, if you're going to be stereotypical American idea of the individual has to save everything. It's a real, and like the entire thing with the Alphaverse and how resolutely wrong they are about everything is, because the Alphaverse is the one where everyone speaks English. I think that this is being a little bit more complicated than falling straight into assimilation and Americanism, because by the end she is valuing family more, but that means that she's actually valuing family more, including in times when she has to navigate complicated, conflicting values.
So what do you think?
What I thought about the family value was not so much about this American value, but rather it has to do with some of based on my experience, some of the beliefs that parents believe their children as their own kind of copies of themselves. As in, there's like a very, very close a sort of how should I say it? Like there's a really close affiliation, and then there are some parts when Michelle Yeoh says that like my daughter turned out to be exactly like myself, stubborn, a mess, and everything. But at the same time, when she and her daughter were seeing this everything bagel together, the daughter kind of convinces that like I was not looking for you to kill you, but I was looking for someone who can feel as I do and see what I do. So there's like some like two-way desires to be equal to each other, and I thought that was kind of like what we've been talking about as the family value. And then I'm not sure if that kind of like directly speaks back to this American value of family, because it also has to do with some kind of Asian American or Asian sort of value or beliefs in family system where, I don't know, children are regarded as copies of their parents.
Oh, won't somebody think of the children? They are our most valuable possessions. They let us live on after death, as long as they are not corrupted by the influence of rock and roll music or lesbianism. Yeah, no, I see that, and I think that you're right. When I reached the end of this movie, I was interpreting. I was maybe not so charitable in interpreting, like, the movie is showing us that Michelle, whose name is not Michelle in the movie,
Evelyn,
Evelyn.
is still struggling. I was like, okay, this is the détente that we were hoping to reach, but maybe that was me not giving the movie enough credit at that point.
Again, I really felt like the fact that the movie ends with her spacing, it ends with the tax person saying, you're clearly trying, you're doing a lot better, but we still have a problem. And as soon as she starts to explain the problem, Evelyn spaces out.
This is true. This is very true. I suppose that very ending scene does carry a lot of weight there. I was just sad that she didn't end up divorcing her husband and getting with the IRS lady in the universe. I was interested in where that story was going, I guess.
Yeah, well, and and that is definitely something where this is both, I think both American movies and probably also a lot of Asian movies always do come down on the idea that divorce is bad, and that divorce should be, the good ending is one where the estranged spouses get back together and don't divorce. And, I am personally the child of a divorce, and boy, am I glad my parents split up.
Same.
So
there is that, but also, she does learn to respect Waymond over the course of her, which is sort of the major thing that was lacking in their relationship before.
Right, is mutual respect.
She specifically learns to recognize that he is a master of wielding soft power.
Yes. Which I thought was a great gender flip, incidentally.
Exactly. I was going to say the same thing, that it was nice that she's the badass sort of patriarch, if you will, in the classic sense, who's trying to hold the whole family together through sheer force of will. And he is...
and like emotional withholding.
Exactly. And he is the person who's trying to mend the fences when she makes mistakes, and like, trying to, and successfully talking the government into giving her second and third chances via the use of cookies.
Via the use of cookies, via the use of sharing, including like sharing personal family difficulties.
So, I mean, regarding that, I wonder how you guys think about the beginning of this movie where it starts with the mirror scene. And then mirror kind of like comes back like repeatedly throughout the whole movie when especially Michelle Yeoh was observing too many skills from too many universes that her sort of what is the other metaphor they were using to describe this like individual self that was like making cracks to the other universes,
like facets and
crumbling cookie, was it? I don't remember.
No, it's the crack. I mean, it's the cracked mirror.
Yeah, cracked mirror. But then it was like a kind of a jar or something. Like
yeah.
Right?
Her pot was cracked.
Yeah, yes. The clay pot that's showing cracks, and then her mind is leaking out through the cracks.
But then when the movie was visually representing it, it was like sort of a cracked mirrors. So I thought that mirror thing was very interesting through line of this movie because as you talked about, like husband and wife kind of mirroring each other. And then exchanging their values and shortcomings at the same time, and then another mirroring between mom and daughter is happening, and then also father and daughter are happening. So that mirror seems to sort of speaks to sort of this like very fluent. I mean, how should I say? Very. Sometimes it's like as you described this like exact exchange of male value and female value and male characters and female characters between the two characters.
Yes, I liked so that sort of shot in a movie where where it is revealed as the camera pans or zooms that you're looking in a mirror and not at the actual scene is like such a classic we're going to do art at you now thing in movies. Like this is it's a long-standing tradition. We've actually seen it in Utena of all things. It happens during the Black Rose arc in Utena.
It's true.
I'll be your mirror and I'll represent anything that you want. I will reflect all of your bullshit, all of its opposites, cinematography. When you think the night has seen your mind, there inside you twisted and unkind. Let me stand to show that you are blind. Let me stick a googly eye on your forehead. But yes, it definitely both sets up this visual metaphor, which I thought there's a lot of like duality here. I thought that the another way that the mirror was being used as a metaphor for like double consciousness of being at once American and Taiwanese and not necessarily being all the one thing and all the other. And so, trying to look at yourself and cohere yourself into one person, which, as we discussed before, is also a real challenge for people with ADD.
Yes.
Is maintaining that coherent sense of self in the face of everything around you.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that, one of the things I think is really impressive in the movie is that they managed to make symbols do like double and triple and quadruple duty and without it feeling overdetermined. Like the mirror works well as, these intergenerational relationships, and it also works well as a metaphor for multiple universes and possibilities, and it also works well for, double consciousness, and it also works well for, like diffuse attention. So, and I feel like it generally does a pretty good job. I do want to pivot to a different symbol. Maybe this is just because Passover just ended, but I thought that they did a very good job making the bagel work as a symbol.
Yes.
And, particularly, and I think it's an interesting contrast because the mirror, the thing that makes the mirror work is that is that it shatters and you going off in all these directions. And the bagel and, the circled tax receipt and the googly eyes are all about unity because it's a circle. And we get to see the ways in which that's, good. Like you get your family unity and silliness and love. And you also get to see all the ways in which it's bad, which is all of the repeating cycles of, whether it's your personal cycle of inability to break out of all of your dysfunctional habits or the, repeating cycle of intergenerational abuse and trauma.
I agree. I mean, it does sort of set up the, there is the duality between the void symbol on the forehead and the third eye symbol on the forehead. Being a huge fan of like the idea that you fight the void with silliness. I'm on record many years of being a fan of that idea. I really loved the googly eye third eye as opposed to the the forehead void thing.
Right, but and the googly eye third eye is very much a mirror. It's just that it's white with a black center instead of being black with a white center.
It's really
and also
good. It's really
and also
good.
it's googly. Like it's the bagel and the black hole and the void stapled to the forehead. Those are all a perfectly static circle. And the thing about the googly eye is that it's a circle that's always wavering.
And at the same time, it's Wayman's symbol because in the at the
'cause
beginning of the movie,
deeply...
when we think that he might be kind of an idiot, we see him putting googly eyes on everything, and it turns out that that's actually a symbol of his power.
Yes, he's deeply devoted to kindness and silliness.
Yes. No, it's very, very good. Here's a random question. How do you feel about one of the Daniels writing himself into the movie so he could get spanked by Michelle Yeoh?
So why don't you take this one first?
Well, I mean, I thought really, I guess that it's a very interesting way of director showing themselves in their own movie. And honestly, I think it is like very much of one of those Daniel's personal desire to be spanked by Michelle Yeoh, probably. Like, growing up watching her films and then like knowing her power and everything.
This question can probably be addressed by Occam's razor, assuming he's into that kind of thing.
But then now that I think about it, when Evelyn was trying to save her daughter from like being absorbed into this everything bagel, the thing that she gives to that Daniel is the black ball thing for the
ball gag,
right?
Yes.
The ball gag. So I just kind of realized that there was another
that's
representation of that.
Oh, that's a great observation. I love that.
Meaning silence. Silence, no void at the end of everything.
Sometimes the void is what people need, as the stepping stone to getting spanked by Michelle Yeoh.
Right.
But but the void is not what you need when it's self-obliteration.
I also think that it's like kind of his like guilt-related representation of him growing up fetishizing Michelle Yeoh as like this fantastic actor that he kind of converted into him as the fetish practitioner in the film.
Oh, so this is also about like symbolically acting out the guilt of fetishizing this, famous Asian woman.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's a two-way street. Like I wouldn't have ended up like this if I hadn't watched your movies, Karen. That's very good. And now it's time for minor notes. We'll talk of dots and specks and modes. If I am gone among the goats, we will still discuss my minor notes. Let's see here. Minor notes. I loved that in their apartment in the hot dog universe, they had like lilies
Yes, yeah,
just so
that's some great extra lesbian symbolism right there with the Yudi.
yeah, just so you know what's up.
In case you were wondering, guys.
But as far as this movie does lesbianism, there is, in that final scene, there I did have a kind of a feeling that this is, and maybe this is a reason why this is a bonus episode, not a mainline episode. Is that there is a way in which this movie is very much using lesbianism as a symbol language, and sort of in a kind of an Ikuhara way, as a symbol and as set dressing, rather than being interested in what, girls actually being attracted to girls or women actually having relationships with women.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The fact that, Joy is like, what, you still care that I like girls in this universe? It is definitely the idea that the experience of being gay is something that isn't unique. It's just yet another way that you can have conflict with your mother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and be American as opposed to being Taiwanese, which is, given who the president of Taiwan is a little bit of a...
Tsai Ing-wen yes, okay, admittedly Tsai Ing-wen is a single cat lady, but that says nothing about her sexuality.
I'm not saying anything.
My mildly problematic crush on Tsai Ing-wen aside.
But the point the point that I think the place where that came through the most for me, and the thing that I would maybe have liked to see the movie do differently, is at the end when Evelyn is making her speech to her dad about how, my daughter's, I'm really lucky that I found a partner as good as Waymond, and we've seen throughout the course of the movie how good a partner Waymond actually is for her. And then she says, and my daughter's partner is just like that to her. And I'm like, I don't know if that's true. I haven't seen anything between the two of them, because the movie has been focused on the mom the whole time. And I might have, and it's like, if it's, the whole plot of the movie is the mom, descending into hell to save her daughter from nihilism. But where is her girlfriend during all of this? Like, what's her place in this? And
so here's an interesting thing though about like, where's the girlfriend is so Jobu Tupaki, Joy, Joy as like nihilistic multiverse hopper. She comes from the Alphaverse, where everybody speaks English. Everybody is, totally willing to sacrifice their loved ones for in a dramatic scene. Oh, we'll go together. But also it's, and I like that this is an action movie that's criticizing action movies. It's deeply regressive, because what it says is, is like, haven't you felt like things are wrong? Haven't you felt like your coffee tastes weird and your hair feels weird and nothing
classic
is as
fascist
right.
shit right there.
Right, like nothing is as good as it used to be. How can we get back? And the fault is because your daughter is a lesbian. And it's not said outright, but like it is all, they say it is all her fault. And it is all her fault because she pushed her daughter too hard. And so, I think part of this is also that, where's Becky? Well, we see the universe where there is no Becky, and it's the one where Joy has no source of external emotional support and lets her mother push her into an actual psychotic break.
Right. Okay. So it is her absence that causes.
I don't think it's just her absence, but I think we see Becky on the edges. And like every time we see Becky on the edges, she's being sweet and supportive, and is basically trying her best to be like the perfect daughter's girlfriend. She's like, oh, I'll use your first name. Oh, you don't like that? Okay, I'll switch immediately to Mrs. Wong. And she's volunteering to babysit the old grandfather who doesn't speak English. So she's doing all of these things, to help. And that is a way in which she really is like Waymond, is that she's not trying to steal the spotlight. She's just sort of being there, sweet and helpful. And we know that at least, one universe where she doesn't appear to exist is the one where Joy has no buffer between her and her mother.
Okay. Sure, I can get that. Do you have thoughts on that, Soyi?
Yeah, I actually think that that's sort of speaking back to this film revolving around Evelyn's going through ADHD and all, because if that's the case, then the entire film is sort of seen and experienced from her her perspective, and then as a not yet really accepting parent, your your daughter's girlfriend will not be at the center of your perception yet. So that's like one thing I thought it would be a sort of explanation of like the sort of like lack of presence of Becky in this film. But at the same time, Becky is also from a different ethnic group. And then also different cultural and national group. She's like she's half Becky, Mexican.
Like how white? She's half Mexican, but at the same time, she's named Becky, which is pretty white.
The most American name.
Yeah, but so it's really like natural for a partner of who is just introduced to a family whose culture and then sort of all this like history is so new to them, and then what you have to do is like really to be nice. So it's actually, for me, it feels very realistically natural because like my partner is also not from Korean heritage, and then he's usually very nice to all my Korean friends, but that doesn't really mean that he's really showing himself. But at the same time, that's actually, what is expected from this kind of relationship. It just takes time. So
what you're saying is that not only is that this is a very realistic depiction of some of the sort of difficulty of the early stages of having an interracial relationship.
Yeah.
And also that showing that it's not, that in and of itself is not actually easy.
Right. Exactly.
Or effortless.
Right.
And I think you're right that having everything also, the fact that the perspective is very much about Evelyn's perspective, in some ways that's a strength, but on the other hand, it does mean that we're prioritizing the mostly straight woman's perspective over the lesbian daughter's perspective.
Exactly.
So, you do kind of have to sign up to be looking through the eyes of the mom through the whole movie.
Yeah.
And we do see right early on the degree to which Becky is invisible to Evelyn when she keeps using he accidentally, and she says that this is because I'm not used to these gendered pronouns. Well, but
I mean, to be
fair, she doesn't screw it up for anybody else in the film.
Exactly.
Like the thing is that is a real problem that I've known native speakers of Mandarin and Cantonese to have, but also in Evelyn's case, she's definitely doing it passive aggressively.
Yes.
So when my mom visited in the U.S. And then she stayed in my apartment, there was really noticeable presences of my partner in that apartment, but she never noticed them at all. She literally thought it was an apartment only for myself, while there were shoes and clothing and everything that belonged to my partner. My mom never noticed they existed. So, like you can think about that perspective of like really like deep down, you have really strong unwillingness to really recognize that partner of your daughter.
Yes. Just the power of deep denial.
Yeah, exactly.
and I mean also the way that she's like, you should be grateful that I'm talking to her at all.
Right.
And then the way that she does acknowledge that she exists, and then completely cuts her out of her attention in every way possible.
This is a bit of a tangent, but just for my curiosity, Alexis, when Evelyn is first referring to Becky to her father, she calls her, Pungyeo. What's the word that she uses for girlfriend after that?
Well, the word that she uses for girlfriend after that is in Cantonese.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that what she's saying is new Pungyeo, just in Cantonese.
Pungyeo means friend. New means girl. Put them together and get an aneurysm from your aged Taiwanese grandfather.
So
that'll do it. no room for ambiguity there.
Caveat, I don't speak Cantonese. This is just my guess from knowing that she was about to say Nupengyo and knowing the phonemic differences between the way, when things transfer between Cantonese and Mandarin.
All right. Cool.
So this is just a very minor nitpick with the closed captioning, which is that there's a bunch of times when they say that, muttering unintelligibly in Mandarin, and even I, who am nothing like a native speaker, I'm like, oh, she's just saying you're crazy for like the 8th time. There was muttering unintelligibly.
I speak about 20 words of Mandarin, and even I was able to catch some of the stuff that they didn't translate. So
right, come on, guys, closed captioning needs to be better. Dang it! Speaking on behalf of those of us with audio processing problems.
All right. Do we have any other things that we wanted to discuss? I don't. I've made it through all of my notes here, I think.
I
so
wonder,
he has plenty of notes left.
No.
We
actually, you actually went through some of my notes. I was wondering because I didn't know what to say today, but I knew that you guys are gonna talk about who are the wizards, who are the lesbians, and whether they fight.
Correct.
So I wonder if we can actually talk about the main question.
That's true. Who are the wizards and who are the lesbians and how much do they fight? Well, so obviously Tupaki, Joy is one of the wizards, but you could also argue that the entire Alphaverse are wizards.
Yeah, particularly Evelyn's dad in the Alphaverse.
Right. Speaks like the way that they, it's the bad parenting tropes. And it's the willingness to, it's the sort of disregard towards other people's value as human beings. It's the idea that they are the alpha verse, and
although I must say that this movie felt a bit post-Homestuck to me, but that is neither here nor there.
I can't believe we have to reset the Homestuck counter again. So I'm not going to explain Homestuck to you. I'm going to do you a favor and let you live in happy ignorance of Homestuck. Okay. If you really want to work on something other than anything that's even slightly important in your life, you can Google Homestuck.
Okay. I will later.
Please continue. I do apologize.
So, but it's and the. Again, the fact that they invented the universe jumping technology, and for a long time, they're the ones who are best at it. So they start out being the wizards, and they are in conflict,
Yeah. Let's be real. You don't invent this kind of technology if you don't intend to do some colonialism with it. At the very least, some extractive colonialism with it. Actually, I should shout out The Space Between Worlds, which has a very similar conceit.
Yes.
Down to, the ease with which certain people can jump between the reason that Evelyn is the chosen one here is our Evelyn is the chosen one is because of what a complete failure she is. And that's sort of the same reason that
that's the same reason that Kara is able to jump between so many worlds, because she's dead in so many other universes. Space Between Worlds is a great book. You should read it. Okay. So, no, that's great. And, it was making me think about it because I don't like time travel stories, but I love multiverse stories. And I was trying to think about what makes them different. And I'm not going to do a great Isaac style sweeping summing up of fundamental difference. No. That is your deal. And if I try to do it, it will not be nearly as good.
I've known Alexis for 23 years, and that's the first time I can remember that they've said anything remotely positive about my habit of lumping and splitting. Yes.
And, but, I think one of the things that I really like about both this and The Space Between Worlds as multiverse stories is that they're about reflecting on all the choices that you made in your past life and throughout your life, and making your peace with the idea that some of those choices are going to have been the wrong choices, and yet you still can't abandon this reality. You're stuck in it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, but I've been personally doing that since I was, 17? So yeah, no, it's a very long sort of midlife regret pile up. But yes, no, I think that, Jobu Tapaki has of course big wizard energy just because of her, because being emotionally invulnerable is like her big deal. The way that she wields her power, because she can't be sad anymore, she can't be vulnerable anymore because she's embraced nihilism, which is as a defense mechanism, which is something which I think is very familiar to a lot of teenagers and non-teenagers.
Yeah.
I do want to say that they didn't do a great job of making that seem unattractive. Like, if they wanted to make that seem like it's such a bad thing, then maybe they should have dressed her a little less well.
Well, I think
She had some really solid fits.
Right.
I honestly think it's supposed to be attractive because otherwise the conflict isn't going to feel real.
Yeah.
And I think that the idea of that, like her particular brand of nihilism is very attractive, except that, she has all the cool outfits, and yet in the end, she's not able to, because she's cut off in the ability to deal with her own emotions. She ends up wanting to take refuge in oblivion because, like, the cool outfits can get you pretty far for a while, but eventually the call of the void, or at least the bagel, it's only been 3 days since I've been allowed to eat chametz again, is going to overcome you.
Then what do you think about her last cool outfit, which is like a Piero kind of...
Yeah, like the clownish thing?
Yeah, crown thing.
It's the Joker, ladies and gentlemen. I think anytime you mention the Joker, you should have to talk about Kafka from Final Fantasy 6 or 3, depending on your age.
Yeah, and honestly, that is a less cool, like, it's a neat costume, but it's less of like a cool outfit of, because like a lot of the stuff that she wears up until the big, climactic scene in the atrium is, a lot of the stuff she wears is the sort of thing that you just, if somebody walked past you on the street, you'd go, wow, cool.
Right.
And that isn't. That is, somebody is either doing performance art or is having like a deep emotional crisis.
Yes. Yeah, no, you do sort of see the gradual slip into, the full sort of depressive psychosis of self-involvement at the end of that trail.
Which I think is, I like that this movie, I actually like that this movie refuses to commit to any one thing too much. Like, you can read this movie in a very Buddhist way of, you should, that like, all of these ties bring suffering, and that like all of this, that even the people who are getting to, even all of her extremely successful lives where she's an actress, or, all of Joy's wonderful outfits still end up meaning nothing. And you can also, of course, read that as an explicit rejection of that because, it is in the end a rejection of the call of the void.
But yeah, no, I think that sort of the wizards versus lesbians conflict here in Potentia is, yeah, as you're saying, the Alphaverse, and their attempt to weaponize mother against daughter for self-preservation reasons versus, the messy business of love.
Yeah, and come to think of it, I mean, this isn't true of every single wizard and every single, Wizlaz book we've read, but one of the things that the really, classic good wizards do, like, good as in good, true to type, like, Jod or Belthandros or whatever, or failed what Adam, I get from Space Between Worlds, he tries and fails to this, but is about, manipulating the alienation of queer women, from their parents to their own ends. And sometimes it's the parents, manipulating that like alienation and desire for love and experience of rejection. But that, that like using that as a weapon, and as a form of control is something that I think is a really common theme in a lot of the stuff we read. And normally we see it as that is a form of control exerted on our lesbian protagonists that they need to break free from. And in this, it's something that's instead exerted on the mother, which is, on the one hand, it makes it a different story from what we're used to, but I think it is an interesting approach.
That's like some of a phrase that I'm also used to, as in like the misbehaving parents actually telling their children, why are you giving me a hard time? Right? Like that kind of rhetoric that we can think of, all this like misdirected misdirection of the hardship and violence from who to who, right? That's
and blaming the child for their own problems,
right,
and blaming the child for having needs, basically.
Exactly.
Anshul also has opinions, but I don't know what they are. I mean, I don't know what his opinions on the movie are.
Actually, my question, the real question I wanted to ask through that main question was whether you actually see any real conflict here. Like, is there a real fight? Like, especially thinking about the last scene where the mother and the daughter are kind of struggling right in front of that everything bagel. Like, the daughter kind of tries like oppose in a kind of martial art act, but then the mom kind of switches her thing into something of love. And then I thought it was like kind of one of the bad cringes in this movie, in my perspective, because it kind of like diverts this direction of actually like intensifying some form of conflict into something else, but then not in a really productive and constructive way, but rather I thought it was kind of like going to this like commercial Hollywood movie kind of direction. So I mean, that's my opinion, but I wonder how you think about it.
I think that's a really good point. I think this is a place where it's trying to critique the action movie thing where every emotional conflict can be resolved by punching each other. But I think you're right. I think it fails and ends up tipping a little too far into the like Hollywood, everything can be fixed if we hug it out. And even though it, backs out of it, I think you're right that scene ends up, is not really as successful.
That is actually the exact moment when I went from being fully on board with everything to sort of going back and reevaluating the plot up to that point and sort of becoming more critical as we discussed earlier of what happened afterwards.
Yeah.
Because, what I wanted in that, scenario was, okay, let her go and then let her come back, which is, I think, probably the proper parenting move at that point. Because you do have to let your daughter individuate. And the thing about, if we're talking about like sort of the classic bad mom tropes, that kind of controlling love is a kind of violence, or can be used as a kind of violence.
Yeah, and it certainly is a kind of abuse.
Yeah, exactly. So, I wasn't super happy about that either.
You're right, and because she does that in two universes, she both like drags her out of the void, and she also reopens her car door and continues the conversation.
Exactly.
And I mean, that was also when I stopped being fully on board with the movie. I felt, for me, the last scenes made me think, okay, well, at least they're trying to make this more complicated. They are trying to show that they don't think that the Hollywood ending that they just offered us is the end of the story. But I think you're right that it would have been much better, both of Evelyn and also of the movie, if her epiphany had allowed Joy to go through the bagel and then come back of her own volition.
It sort of dovetails with one of her beefs with her dad being, well, why did you let me go so easily? When I think that was the appropriate thing for him to do under the circumstances. I think, there are lines. Like, if you think that your daughter is in fact going to like spiraling off into, suicide, drug abuse, that kind of oblivion, then yeah, you do need to hold on. But it's a cross-cultural question of where that line is,
right. And how,
are you interpreting not having a husband as being throwing your life away, Right.
How much of that void is is supposed to be depression and spiraling out of control, and actually needing that family connection to pull you out, and how much of that is supposed to be a queer daughter's need for independence from her controlling and yet inept at being controlling mother.
Exactly.
I honestly think that Evelyn's ineptness is what saves her, to my mind, from being I don't think that it excuses any of her behavior, but it makes it clear, the narrative voice makes it clear that this is supposed to be a bad thing. And also that, this is also, again, part of the story of how hard it is to live with somebody with undiagnosed ADHD. Which, all of my exes listening to this podcast episode are nodding along, I'm sure. But and many of my friends. But, I think that means that they have to realistically show all the ways in which that can go bad. And that you do have to offer people, because we don't have another multiverse, you either have to write people off entirely, or you have to offer them a chance for reconciliation if they're showing the willingness to take the first steps. And I never think it should be mandatory. Right. But I think that there's always a balance to be struck between, you don't owe anyone forgiveness, which is true, but also that sometimes you can forgive people for screwing up because they had their own problems.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think so. And we're reaching an hour mark, so I think that we may have successfully podcasted about this movie now.
Hooray! Thank you very much to the person on Tumblr who suggested that we do this.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Soyi, for coming and being a guest on this podcast. You can read Soyi's work. Have you published anything recently? Says your editor. You can read. What's the title of your dissertation?
Oh my goodness. Oh, first of all, thank you for inviting me to talk about this film. I honestly came to have a better understanding of a film that I watched 3 times by talking with y'all. Maybe it's... Well, I can talk about my dissertation, but...
I was just saying, just plug the name of your dissertation if people want to look it up on ProQuest.
Oh my god. Viral and visceral feminist media, art in neo-colonial South Korea. And I've been sort of writing a bit more about, more recently, Korean diasporic artist works. But anyways. But I wanted to say, though... I believe it to be a very low-key, kind of free-floating conversation thing, but I realized it covers actually really, really important points of the film that I really am glad that I'm here today.
I'm really glad that you were able to join us. I thought it was great. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.